Hi, welcome to the Kingston Police Services Board meeting number 2208, uh, Thursday, May 19th, 2022. To start the meeting, I would like to invite the Chief McNeely to lead the presentation for the Integrated Care Hub.
Thanks so much. And so with us, just to do a quick introduction, we have as part of the presenters from the Integrated Care Hub, we have Gilles Charret, who's the ED for Trellis HIV and Community Care, Megan O'Leary from Street Health, Carol Ravnus from Addictions Mental Health. I think that's everybody, Gilles? Perfect. Yeah, that's who we'll be introducing. And then we'll have Sergeant Clem Nissan-Yagam, who's going to be presenting from the police perspective. So I'll let Jill take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chief McNeely. I'm just going to share my screen. Carol, Megan, and I have been collaborating on a presentation, so I'll look after moving the slides along, and I'm going to kick us off. Right. Hopefully you can see this. I'm seeing some nods. Terrific. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present to you today about the Integrated Care Hub. I know it's a project that's received a lot of attention over the last 2 years, some critique and some positive reception as well. And so I just wanted to take a moment to share with you a little bit about what the program is, its genesis, and then talk about some of the key metrics and accomplishments that the team at the ICH have made. And I want to begin by framing this as, it's referred to as the Integrated Care Hub because the objective has always been to integrate services that have historically been siloed. So bringing organizations together who have historically had different pieces that they're responsible for and bringing those services to our community's most marginalized people in as low barrier a manner as possible. So I'm just going to continue on. So very briefly, the genesis of the Integrated Care Hub was really in response to a number of factors. One is the acute drug poisoning crisis that we see deepening in our communities, not just in Kingston, but all over North America. The development of homeless encampments in the city, or I should say, the more prominent homeless encampment that began in 2020 at Bell Park, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the work that the Trellis HIV and Community Care, which at the time was known as HARS, was doing by way of community outreach, as well as the outreach that AMHS, Home Base, Street Health were doing with marginalized people living in encampments, led to the city extending the opportunity for a 3-month pilot project that took place at Artillery Park in the summer of 2020 to integrate consumption and treatment services, day services, like a drop-in program, and a rest zone where people can be away from the elements and get some rest. We had about 5 weeks to get up and running, and quickly found ourselves at capacity and responding to a need that we've known has been present in the community for some time, but we were surprised by the degree to which the need was there. This prompted a move to a longer term location, which is at 661 Montreal Street, where we have been since the end of October of 2020. I'm just going to quickly break down the major components of the program, as well as share with you some key metrics. The first is the rest zone, which is open to people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the objective, again, implied in the name, is for people to have rest. It's not a conventional shelter type space, but it does provide people with the opportunity to escape the elements and have a sleeping pod that they have access to. And now this data is from back in January. I've pulled it from another presentation, but as of January, 405 unique individuals had access to our rest accommodations. And this doesn't include individuals who rest in the day program area or the drop-in space, as we refer to it. So that leads us to the drop-in space, which is the second component of the program. It's where people can access washrooms 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. We close 1 hour a day for a deep cleaning, both for just regular maintenance and also COVID protocol. It has showers available for people. We provide practical assistance, access for people to store belongings, either in bins or in lockers, as well as meals that are provided primarily through community partners, Lionhearts being one of them. Loving Spoonful and other organizations also donate food that we then redistribute to the people we serve. So again, metrics from back in January, since opening, over 87,000 meals have been served. We average about 165 meals a day that we hand out. And on average, there are 8 showers being taken a day, which takes us to a little over 4,000. That number, of course, would be significantly higher now that we are in May. Next component is harm reduction services. And so the thing that makes the ICH unique is really that it takes a harm reduction approach to offering services. Historically, a lot of shelter spaces have had abstinence requirements in order for people to be admitted to receive shelter services. That's beginning to shift, but we take a harm reduction approach. And part of that is acknowledging the reality of the lives of people who use substances and providing them with tools and supports so that, frankly, they don't die or suffer other harmful effects of their substance use. And so since opening in August of 2020, again, metrics from back in January, over 1,100 unique individuals have been served and provided with harm reduction services, over 16,000 transactions, which include brief counseling sessions. So for example, how to use the equipment, Narcan training. And so to that end, over 11,000 Narcan kits have been distributed. And then part of harm reduction is also the street health team and our community outreach workers conducting community cleanups of sharps as we see them, or as we have people in the community disclosed to us that they've located some on the KP trail or outside of the business or on a sidewalk somewhere, and people will be dispatched to collect those. Since the program opened, there has been an 805% increase in harm reduction transactions, which is a huge, huge amount. Part of that is due to the fact that now harm reduction services are available to the community 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is a big shift. Prior to that, there were a few locations where harm reduction supplies could be accessed, but they were generally during limited business hours. Next component of the model is this notion of integrated care. And it's the idea of joining mental health, substance use, primary care, housing services for people who are in need. And AMHS, one of our lead partners, has served over 380 individuals through case management services since August of 2020. They provide case managers on site 5 days a week. And that's a way of connecting people through to a continuum of care. And again, the idea is rather than having people go to various organizations to access services, we're bringing the services to them. One of the next components and one of the real success stories of this program has been our community support program. And that is a way of employing the people that we serve to do meaningful work and receive a meaningful wage for their efforts. It's a program that aims to provide life skills and provide a basic income so that people don't have to hustle either for food or the substances they use. By extension, we hope that it's also decreasing the amount of petty crime that takes place or sex work in the community. It's also really helped us out when we've experienced staffing shortages due to COVID, in that we can hire the people we serve to work alongside the harm reduction outreach workers in the Integrated Care Hub to do things like serve coffee, do some tidying up, monitor people as they're using the washrooms or shower areas. Key successes. Hospital diversion. One of the major impacts of the Integrated Care Hub and its co-location with the consumption and treatment services is that we're able to divert people from hospital. And so for 2021, we have a total of 777 hospital diversions. That's either for mental health, physical ailments that we've been able to address on site through primary care services, either through nurses or physicians, or a paramedic that's on site, and then for overdoses as well. The staff at the ICH, both through the consumption and treatment services and also drug poisonings that are taking place on property or in the area off property, have responded to over 600 overdoses since opening. So that is direct connection to people who've been diverted from emergency rooms, people we've been able to stabilize within the space itself, but also lives that have been saved that can then be connected to other services, whether it's mental health care or housing or opiate substitution therapy, or even primary care to get other physical needs met. The ICH has been a discharge destination for hospital services and Kingston Police. This has got with it some pros and cons, but in 2021, various police services, including Kingston Police, have dropped off 94 individuals to the ICH after being in contact with police, and then 82 people have been directly discharged from Kingston Health Sciences to the Integrated Care Hub for various reasons that they may have visited the emergency room or had been admitted. Cost savings. And so responding to an overdose at the Integrated Care Hub, whether it be through the CTS or somewhere else on property, averages cost about $70 versus $340 just to go through triage at the emergency department. So there are significant cost savings by way of ER diversions, but also healthcare system dollars savings as well. Biggest news and thing that we're probably the most proud of as a team is that KFLA is one of only 2 health unit regions to see a decrease year over year in opioid-related fatalities across the province. When you look at the data, this overlaps quite neatly with the opening of the Integrated Care Hub. There are certainly other factors that contribute to this as well, but it's difficult to say that it is not related to the efforts of all of the partners and staff who are working at the Integrated Care Hub. I just want to wrap up with a quick slide related to the safety landscape, because police services, that's the #1 priority of us all, is making sure that the people that we engage with, whether it be staff or the people that we serve, are living in as safe an environment as possible, and that includes the neighbors. The people that we serve upon intake are presented with the Integrated Care Hub's rights and responsibilities, and this really outlines what people can expect from us and what we expect from them in return. The objective is to really work collaboratively with the people that we serve to really govern together, if you will. A lot of the input into the programming is led by the people that we serve, and they take a great deal of ownership because they get to participate in the creation of the programming that takes place at the ICH. The most common types of incidents that we tend to witness as a staff are interpersonal conflicts among people who are accessing the space. So whether they're accessing the drop-in space or the rest zone, there are squabbles that have often begun outside that are taken inside the space that we have to diffuse. Certainly in the broader community, there are instances of theft, other crimes that are taking place. There have been no violent incidents directed towards staff, although we had back in January a violent incident that resulted in a death in January on the property. But by and large, this is a community that is experienced a lot of trauma, and just with anyone living in close quarters with each other, there's going to be conflict from time to time. And so that's what we see the most. The encampment is also got implications. So that is directly outside of the fence area, recognizing there are other encampments in the city as well, but there's a large one just outside of our gates. And on the one hand, that provides us with access to the people that we serve in the event of a drug poisoning so that we can respond quickly. One of the key things in a drug poisoning crisis is not to use alone. And so having people close by is helpful in that sense. It also causes some challenges. It's difficult to manage a large group of people who are sleeping rough in the park. They are not on the ICH property directly. And so there are limits into what we are able to do, although we do try to engage with people off property and diffuse situations before they get bigger. So there are pros and cons to the location. Obviously, there are pros and cons for the people we serve, but there are also some challenges for the neighbors. And we certainly have a lot of empathy for what the neighbors are experiencing from time to time. We've adopted a safety and engagement model where we have staff, usually 1 per shift, who is there to engage with the people we serve on property, de-escalate situations, but also, if need be, contact police services if things require additional support. They also, from time to time, will do neighborhood patrols to check the perimeter of the fencing along the KP trail to see if there have been any breaches. But really, when you consider the number of people people that we serve on a given day, oftentimes they're just tasked with managing what's taking place in the parking lot and making sure that people are coexisting in a peaceful way or as peacefully as possible. Our partnerships are critical. So whether it's City of Kingston bylaw or City of Kingston bylaw or Kingston Police Services, it's important that we continue to collaborate together to ensure as great a deal of safety as we can provide. And so we're happy for this opportunity to be able to share with you a little bit more about the programs that we offer. And then finally, we have a community advisory counselor, community liaison that is really meant to troubleshoot concerns in the neighborhood and work collaboratively on solutions. It has been paused since the late fall when we experienced a pretty significant COVID outbreak amongst people experiencing homelessness, but we're looking at ways of re-engaging the neighbors now. The previous iteration was not without its challenges, and we need to refocus our efforts on making sure that there's constructive dialogue that's meant to be solutions focused. So I think I will leave it there and continue on to Megan, who will be sharing a little bit about the CTS, unless Chief McNeely, you think that this is a good pause for a break on the for questions on this section, or should we just continue on?
I think it's worthwhile continuing on to tell the whole story. Yeah.
Great. Then I will pass things along to Megan.
Thanks, Jill. So I'm Megan O'Leary, Director of Clinical Services with Kingston Community Health Centres. And we also have Justine McIsaac on the call with us as well. So she's the coordinator of the CTS program and is the staff of Kingston Community Health Centres. And so she will speak to some of the information as well. But so Kingston Community Health Centres is funded to deliver the CTS. We're funded by the Ministry of Health, and we also work with the federal government and have federal exemption in place to allow controlled substances on site. And our model involves leadership with paramedics. So it's a paramedic-led model. And we also have community support workers who work alongside the paramedic to support clients accessing our space every day and are involved in overdose prevention. So we're going to provide a little bit of an overview in terms of what the CTS actually is, our role in overdose prevention, and some data on the volumes of clients we see each month. So I will turn it over to Justine here. And I also welcome you at the end to ask Justine questions around the CTS. So Justine, I'll hand it over to you for the next few slides.
Thank you so much. And it's actually really cool to be here today and have this opportunity to talk to the police board. I never thought I'd get to do something like this. So it's pretty cool. So I've been the coordinator of consumption treatment services since June 2020. And we had a great opportunity to pair with an organization whose philosophies aligned on how we view people that use substances. So since then, we've had a massive increase in visits to our site as well as our response to overdoses. But consumption treatment services exist to allow people to basically have respite from the war on drugs, to use in a safe environment, a controlled environment. If they do experience an adverse event like an overdose, that we can respond quickly and effectively and reduce the harmful risks of an overdose, like noxious brain injuries and things like that. When we're responding to overdoses in the community that are not in controlled settings, those are far more difficult and usually come with more consequences for people, surrounding brain injury and things like this. So people are allowed to come in with a pre-obtained illicit substance that they use in the space monitored. People can inject, consume orally or nasal. We're not in the position yet where we have an opportunity to provide safe inhalation, which is pretty disheartening in a sense that we have people that are smoking substances, and it's actually a less invasive route than injecting. People have less rates of abscesses and blood infections and things like that as they do with injecting substances. So, and people are dying at the same rates while inhaling their substances as they are injecting it. So I know as we move along through operating consumption sites, we are pushing more for safe inhalation so that we can respond to overdoses quickly and effectively for people who are inhaling their substances as well. So slide. So how it works is people come into CTS, they're overseen by someone like myself, a support worker and a paramedic. And a big reason why we chose to go with the medic model is that we're working with an untrusting population for a variety of different reasons. And they've struggled to trust people in uniform. And we thought that we had a great opportunity to rebuild relationships with the people we serve and people in uniforms. And I think the program has been incredibly successful, as now we have medics on the road as well too, who are far more experienced dealing with this population. And if you ask a lot of them, they find their job a lot easier to navigate on the road as well too, because they have more experience working with people that use substances. So our main role is overdose prevention and intervention. We do a lot of education surrounding people's use. Obviously, we put things in place to hopefully prevent people from overdosing. So encouraging people to get on opiate substitution therapy, harm reduction practices, encouraging people to do test dose, go low and slow, and just providing an immense amount of education around best practices and safe use, right? We provide all the supplies that people need to use safely. And we do an immense amount of referrals through CTS. So the beautiful thing about CTS is we have an opportunity to build relationships with people and build trust with people. And once we build those relationships, it allows us to find out more about people and what their wants and their needs and their desires are for their own health and their own life. And it gives us an opportunity to refer them to programs like primary care, addiction treatment, residential treatment, so gains assessments and sending people to treatment services, getting people's hepatitis C treated if they're HIV positive, getting their meds stable so that they can live as healthy as possible, just trying to reduce as many risks as we can that come along with active substance use, but providing that safe space where people can come in and actively use and not feel shame and guilt. This is a really strange concept for a lot of people that even actively use substances, because they've been told their whole lives what they're doing is bad and it's wrong and this and that. So it's a big deal for people to consciously choose their own health and walk into a space and be vulnerable and allow us to sit with them in their shame and guilt and work through those things. Slide. So initially we started out at Barrack Street, which is 115 Barrack Street Health Center. And initially this made the most sense to kind of put our program into another established program that works with people that use substances. But it was really hard initially because there wasn't a lot open after hours in the city. And in some capacity, we became this kind of like unofficial drop-in in the evenings as well too. And we were trying to manage a lot of behaviors that came along with like chronic homelessness and having nowhere to go and lack of time and space to hang around and things like that. And so we were doing meaningful work, but not in the way that we were meant to. So when we had the opportunity to pair our program with like a shelter type setting, drop in and an organization that believed in the same things that we did, it made the most sense. And it was the smartest decision that we've made in regards to this program, moving as a pilot into Artillery Park to really service people exactly where they're at. It makes sense to have consumption treatment services where you know people that are actively using substances are living and hanging out. It makes absolute the most sense. So we have increased our visits substantially since then. We have reached a far broader community and our overdose responses have increased substantially. And that really began at Artillery Park. As we shifted to the integrated care hub and established ourselves more and established a home base, once again, those visits increased substantially and our overdose responses increase substantially. And that is what we are here for. We are here to respond to those overdoses. We are here to alleviate some of the burden from our healthcare providers and emerge and things like that, and provide a safe space where people can be open about their substance use so that they don't have to die alone in some stairwell or in a park or things like that, that they have a community that's around them that's willing to support them and keep them as safe as possible. Slide. So our wraparound care is super, super important. The work that we do with people when coming into the space just doesn't stop at, filling out a form and allowing them to inject safely. We build relationships. We try to keep people as healthy as possible. We do an immense amount of referrals to opiate substitution therapy, mental health services. We do an immense amount of counseling and case management. Primary care, we have primary care that comes on site, but we also have access to our rapid addiction medicine services through Street Health as well, and really trying to get people that were unattached before attached to services and provide them as much care as we possibly can to reduce the risk for them through their use. Slide. So this is pretty wild. We had over 12,000 visits in the last year, which on days feels very overwhelming and is very, very challenging. And it's hard on days that you have to do 9 overdoses and people are incontinent and you're literally bringing them back from the dead. But this was our goal. This was our purpose, to serve people that needed us the most. So to see that number and see the work that we have put in and the people that we serve that have put in and the hub in general have put in, we're obviously doing something right. And we should be super proud of that. As disheartening as that number seems, we should be proud of what we've done and that we're able to provide a safe space for people. Slide. The CTS staff responded to a total of 247 overdoses in the space. That's a lot of work, especially like on days that, like I said, we're responding to anywhere between 9 and 12 overdoses, and we're running out of oxygen by 6 o'clock and have to get you know, a new batch of oxygen dropped off to us. But you have to think of it from this perspective as well too. Like Jill said in the previous slide, you know, it costs us $70 to respond to an overdose, and it costs more than $340 to start a triage file at the hospital. But imagine, you know, if Emerge had already seen 12 overdoses that day and we had sent another 9 to Emerge, and how much of a burden that is to the healthcare system as well too. And we know we're lacking in healthcare services and always short staff. So if we can be that buffer and provide as much community care as possible, we will do that fully and completely. Slide. So you can see how from November 2020, you can see the pattern of up and down with overdoses, how we spiked substantially in January 2022, then you have a drop, then you go back up. This is all about drug trends, supply that is on the street, lethal, toxic batches of substances. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges to the work that we do, is that we never know when that's coming, right? We can go days and days and days without an overdose, and then we're on our toes for days and days after that, right? To follow those trends is very, very difficult. A lot of this is because of the cuts and fillers that are in the substances, like bootleg benzodiazepines, like etizolone, which is 10 times more powerful than Valium. It makes those overdose response is a lot harder as well too. And the post-consumption care that we have to do for people is for long periods of time, because they're sedated for long periods of time. You could not discharge that person from consumption treatment services. You would be putting them at risk in many different ways. So sometimes there's people in the space that we monitor for 8 to almost 9 hours a day. And that's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's worth it to keep people safe. So you can never really follow drug trends, and you have to rely heavily on the community and people that are actively using substances to give you that information as well too, so that we can put it out to the broader community so they can keep themselves safe as well. Slide. So we have served quite a few unique individuals. We vary from anywhere between 120 unique individuals to 185 unique individuals that we serve through consumption treatment services. That is a huge, huge increase, because when we were operating at a barrack, there was times that we were only seeing around 60 unique individuals a month. So we really are reaching people, and the people that we need to reach the most. You can see that we had a drop there, obviously, when we had a massive COVID outbreak at the hub. We just had a lot of people isolating off site and things like that. That was really hard for us too, because you know that people are a significant overdose risk, and them not being able to access the site was very worrisome, right? They were exceptionally vulnerable, and then being sick on top of it increase their risk of overdose as well. Next slide. So this is some client feedback, things that people have said to us over the years, like if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have this. They will give you water if you are thirsty, they will give you food if you need it, and then they will save your life. We do so much more than what people realize, and the thing that we rely on the most is the relationships that we build with people. That is the most important part. That is the real harm reduction aspect of the work that we do, is allowing people to heal from an immense amount of trauma, to provide people a safe space that are carrying an excruciating amount of physical, mental, and emotional pain, and showing people acceptance, right? That goes a long way. When your entire life you have been told that you're a bad person, but you don't necessarily feel like a bad person. You just have terrible things that you have to live with, right? And we put this unrealistic expectation on people in regards to how they cope and with trauma and things like that. But we know through, our experiences, adverse childhood experiences, if you have an ACEs score of 4 or more out of 10, you have almost a 1,200% likelihood of injecting substances. So what choices do people really have, right? And this is a great opportunity. We've seen so many people watch the work that we do in the space, and they truly are the first responders in the community. They are always responding to overdoses before we are. They're the experts, and they see the value in what we do, and also see the value that they could give to this work with their experiences. And the best experience is relatable experience sometimes. So really caring for each other and their peers, and when they see us do the work, they believe that they can do this work as well too. And that's really cool to watch somebody say like, hey, this is something I can do because I understand this, and I've lived this life, and I know what it takes to move on from this. But the reality is we're living in such a terrible time with this drug poisoning crisis that if we don't keep people alive, they don't even have the opportunity to make progressive changes in their life, right? People are literally dying after first use or accidental use or things like that. So these places are more important than ever before. And this is a man-made problem that we need to adjust quickly to. Slide. So our next steps are really strengthening our partnerships, right? And giving everybody on board to ensure that, we're providing the best care for people, and that we're all servicing the same people. And are we giving them the same clear messages about who they are, what their needs are, what their rights and responsibilities are, what's appropriate for them in life, what is adequate housing for somebody that uses substances, and really just trying to rally around people and build them up and take care of them to the best of our ability. And that's what community does. It takes a village to raise a child, and for some reason we have lost that concept somewhere, but we really truly need to get back to this, because everybody has value, purpose, and meaning in our community, and it's time that we start showing people that. Bye.
I just chime in a bit. Thanks, Justine. Thanks, Jill, and thanks to Chief McNeely and the board for having us here to talk about the Integrated Care Hub. And as Justine highlighted, this is really an opportunity, our next steps, to build on the tremendous work that has been done at the ICH. And as you heard Jill talk about, Megan talk about, Justine talk about, to concentrate on the integration part is where we're going. And so you'll see in front of you key partners. They're not the only key partners, but what we're hoping to do is have what we've been referring to as a consortium of health providers, or consortium of partners working together with a signed MOU about which each of us are bringing to the table and how we will work together. And really up to this point, it has been Trellis or HARS previously, and Kingston Community Health Center, who sponsors the CST, providing care. This is a great opportunity to take what they've built and really to formalize that. And so we're looking to have a collective mission, vision, and values, well-defined roles and responsibilities, to make sure that we maintain having this be a consumer-driven process and a low barrier, because the continuity of care is so important in terms of the consumption treatment site, keeping people alive, making sure that we show compassion, and then hopefully filtering them through those who want to and are able to other services that exist. So this brings together folks that can work on housing with them, and with having both Providence and Addictions Mental Health at the table, the two major players when it comes to, along with the CHC mental health services, really able to do that, that integrated planning. The next and final slide, if I could. And so you're probably well aware up to this point, these programs have been funded by the city really as the lion's share, but also of course the CTS is funded by the Ministry of Health, and Trellis receives Ministry of Health funding. But the city of Kingston advocated hard with the Ministry of Health to say this is really a health related problem, and there should be funding from health. So they were very successful in that. We've got 2 years of funding and a real mission from the province, from the ministry, to work on the integration piece, to work on our outcomes, to work on our partnerships. And we're very thankful for that support from the city of Kingston in making that happen. They also still fund a portion of the integrated care hub, and we receive United Way support. So our goals are really to build up that integration and programming. And quite honestly, 2024 will be here before we know it. So we're going to have to work for longer term and permanent funding for these very necessary programs. So I really think that we look forward, I know we look forward to working with Kingston Police Services. You're an important part of our team. I think that, again, as mentioned in the program, there's care pathways that I think we could strengthen both from hospital and police. When are we involving you? What will you know we've done so far when you're involved? For those ones that are more predictable, there's always unpredictable events where we're going to have to call because it's an emergency. So we're really looking forward to building more pathways of care. And again, as has been highlighted, this is all about relationships with the people that we have the honor to serve, in terms of those that use the programs, partners, our community neighbors, and others that live in the area. So we're really looking forward to building on that over the next several months. So I'll pause there because I'm sure people have questions. Yes.
Well, would you like to have Sergeant Clem speak first before we ask questions? Angie?
Sure, we can do that. I know Jimmy has his hand up there.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
I can wait.
Okay. Sergeant Clem, is that okay? Can you go?
Yeah, and no problem. Hi everyone. I'm Clem Nisanagam. I'm the sergeant of the Community Policing Office, which is called CORE, which is our community-oriented response and engagement. There's two sides to CORE. There is a traffic side and a crime prevention side, and I'm the sergeant in charge of the crime prevention side. So just to speak to to get to where we're at now. So I had started in January 2021, and around that time was when our office started receiving complaints from residents in and around the care hub. These complaints consisted of individuals trespassing and unwanted low threshold criminal behaviors, including a lot of behaviors of thefts from vehicles and whatnot. We soon realized that the core of the problem that was creating a lot of the other issues involved homeless individuals, untreated mental health issues, and drug addiction. In the summer of last year, I acted as a KP liaison with the City of Kingston's community liaison team. And this was a good opportunity for us to field a lot of complaints and concerns from the residents in the area. And the majority of complaints involved behavior that included individuals that were under the influence of controlled substances and mental health calls. This was a good opportunity for us to engage with the community and clarify a few points. A lot of times we would receive complaints asking why we couldn't just arrest anyone that was high on the street. But for us as police, we have to operate under the law, and there isn't anything or any law that will allow us to arrest somebody that's high compared to the Liquor License Act. Whereas if somebody was under the influence of alcohol. So on top of the frontline response, I also had the opportunity to meet with local residents and businesses as well. This included having set up mediation sessions with a few businesses and staff at the Integrated Care Hub. My last engagement with one of the businesses was as recently as of two weeks ago. And for some of the more community outreach that our office took part in over the course of last year, that included increased focus patrols in and around the Care Hub, including the KP trails. And that consisted of bicycle patrols and foot patrols as well. We also started taking some of our recruits that were fresh back from the Ontario Police College down to that area as well. This was part of a stigma reduction plan, also to get them exposed to the various dynamics in and around the area. Some of the businesses were also offered what we call a CEPTED, which is a crime prevention through environmental design. And we have continued communication with the residents and some of the businesses in and around. So that's what I can speak to in terms of our community outreach.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant Clem. Jimmy, we'll start the questions with you. And then I would like to ask a question after you.
It's not a question. I just want to take the opportunity to thanks for the chief to bring this presentation along with these great Kingstonians. It was really eye-opening presentation with a lot of good information and their real work on the ground. And I think I was not aware of it, how much they are doing it. Being very involved in the community, it's just opened my eyes that how much work they have been doing. Now, I want to just thank you for the board of directors and the volunteers who've been doing this such important and great job to build a better community for our children, for the next generation. And also, I want to thank you for all those partners who've been helping them and to continue the great work and will help them to continue the great work. I just urge everybody, and this just claps for everyone who've been doing this one, supporting them, whether they're families or friends and or businesses and organizations and all the volunteers and the board of directors. Thank you very much for a great job. And I wish that I can help more, but continue a great job. And it's no doubt that we will be able to build a greater city for everyone included.
I'll say that Jimmy speaks on behalf of the board for that. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, sir.
So a couple things I'd like to ask. Addicts understand addicts, addictive behaviors. I'm wondering if on the police force, there's some addicts that live clean that would like want to work in this environment to help other addicts. I know that would be very rewarding, you know, without them putting up their hands and saying, hey, I have addictive behaviors. But I imagine that they would be very understanding as to the people that they're dealing with. And another thing is, so in the programs, as people, it sounds a lot, what we talked about today would be triage. And you know, the bad stuff that can happen with people using. Is there outlets? Is there, say I'm an addict, I'm using your services, but I want to learn about my disease. I want to go to rehab. Is there opportunities for that, for people to like get to a rehabilitation, learn about the disease, to clean, learn how to eat again properly, learn how to sleep again, learn how to be the line between right and wrong, learn how to stop lying, all those different things that an addict has to go through. Is there an opportunity for that? And even like the trauma to get the person to that place, is there group therapy going on for these people to learn when they stop dealing with their problems? That's a lot of questions. So I don't know who wants to answer that, but please go ahead. It says
me.
Megan O'Leary, but I think
I know,
it was
I know, I'm Justine, sorry.
Justine, right? So
Yeah, I think probably both me and Carol could speak to this. So yes, absolutely, there's those opportunities, right? And I think one of the biggest things that we have done wrong with people that live with a substance use disorder is that we have isolated them further, right? Which does not help with their disease that they carry, right? And so what we've done here is that we have built a community that has allowed people to be who they are. We accept them for who they are and all the baggage that comes along with their trauma and their hurt and their pain and things like that. And once you start to build those trusting relationships, you do see what people need, and they are more open about what they want to do and how they want to progress, and whether that be through, you know, a 12-step program, or us doing a referral to residential treatment, or getting them on opiate substitution therapy, or connecting them with like housing, right? But giving people like meaningful connection. I think one of the most important things that we do here is through that piece of employment, right? I think one of the big misconceptions about people that use substances is that you know, people just want everything given to them. And in all reality, that's just not the case. People are looking for a hand up, not a handout, right? And so what I've seen through the employment piece is I've watched people rebuild their confidence and see that they have value and see that they have purpose. And it's that old NA saying, it's one addict helping another is the therapeutic value in it all. And seeing that their experiences can actually be used to help other people. And so I've watched even people's behaviors that seem quite out of control to somebody outside of this space. And when we gave them employment and something to work for and to be accountable for, you saw people's behaviors change as well too, because they had something that was meaningful to them and that they enjoyed and that felt good about themselves, right? So the connection is the first piece, is like building that trust with people, finding out what they need, and then making sure that we support that adequately, right? And everybody's journey looks different, and we're 100% open to whatever people need and helping them get connected with that.
I would, it would be nice to see that over the period of you taking stats with your care, maybe because you will know if someone is successful and someone is not a part of the treatment anymore, and someone that has been reintroduced to society and is loving it, and probably those same people will be volunteering their time at the hub, right?
Yeah,
So it would
yeah.
be nice if that was a statistic too. Yeah, as low as it may be, it would be nice to know there are people that are getting through the getting through.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, you know, everybody can do better, always capturing like, you know, more of our successes. Sometimes all we can capture is our challenges, right? But in all reality, we need to be celebrating those successes as well too. And the reality is we are a staff of a lot of people with lived and living experience. And again, that's another opportunity that people see, okay, well, so-and-so did it, like I have the capability to do it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, the thing you said earlier, it really, for this to work, it really does take a village. And that's going to be the mindsets of the residents that have to change as well, like everyone, for it to work. So Gilles, you had a question?
I'll defer to Megan first. I think Megan put her hand up first.
Oh, please, Megan, go ahead.
Well, and it's just a quick point to build off, Justine, and to answer your question. I think from an organizational point of view, our priority is to come together as partners in the community and work at improving the pathways into care. And so, you know, Carol, Gilles, and I, and Justine is a big part of this too, is working at creating models where it's easy for someone to see where the next door is. So, you know, providing harm reduction supplies and having the CTS available is an engagement tool. And then the next step is to, to connect them with addiction treatment, to connect them with primary care, and to facilitate those pathways. So it very much is at the core of our work, from an organizational management perspective, to make sure that we're making that easier for people. And some of these programs really are just that first point to build connection and connect with people and get them in the door, and then be able to connect them on. So, I mean, ultimately the end goal is to make sure that they have the supports and services that they need, and when they're ready for it, it's there. So, and I think, and just to Dean's point as well, her team at the CTS is, I think 21 people, and the majority of them have had lived experience. And so are true living examples of how, through engagement in the programs and building connections and getting into treatment, they can, make different choices in life, have different opportunities, and ultimately then hold down a permanent job and be really successful at their job, and continue to impact others and be a leader for and inspiring, to others as well. So the team at the hub in general is incredibly inspiring in that way.
Agreed. Gilles.
Really, we're sort of continuing the same thread here. I just wanted to focus on some pretty foundational stuff. We're talking about programming a lot in this conversation, and your question led to it. I think it's a really important one. The role of the integrated care hub, first and foremost, is stabilization, is getting people to a place where they can predict that they will get 3 meals a day. They will have a roof over their head. They will be able to take a shower and use the washroom and not in the bush. That people know their names and can build relationships with them, so that trust can be established, so that then they can engage in other services. So that then, because of the trust, as Justine and Megan, both explained, there's a bridge that's built to make a warm referral, whether it's to housing or to mental health. The other point that I wanted to touch on, because we didn't quite get there, was around the idea of group supports. We as a team collectively, all of the partners have a lot of vision for what may be possible with the community that we serve. The last 2 years of the pandemic has layered on additional complexity and being able to do group work, for example. And then there are some limitations with the facility that we have and what we're able to do. We're really putting our heads together around what that looks like going forward as we emerge from the pandemic into hopefully a bit of a different context where we can get groups together. But keep in mind, this project happened as a result of COVID, and has been limited by COVID impacts. The idea of we still have to distance people, we still have to isolate when required. And so some of the things that we would normally want to be able to do in this type of program, we haven't been able to, but we hope to.
Thank you. Bridget.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the presentations. I'm going to try to keep it to just 3 questions. The first one is, it's clear we have a healthcare crisis, and there's also a lack of healthcare services. So just following on from what Jared asked, I just wonder how much, do we have a rehab center? I know that Providence Care offers some rehab, but we don't actually have a rehab center in Kingston. And how important is that for us to actually help people transition?
So if I could, Councillor Doherty, you're right. We don't have, we've got one treatment program for males through the Salvation Army. We do have a detox center, but that's really to detox, not to treat. We would have access, and we are advocating for stabilization beds locally. And that's looking hopeful, but we haven't seen a funding letter yet. And what that program would look like is 4 months where you could really get into a program and work on some of the things that have uniquely influenced your life with the support of peers and trained counselors. So in the interim, what we do is we work, and I think everybody pulls the same, though we're addictions mental health, everybody presenting on this call, works towards what's your individual story? How do we move you on? Are you ready to move on to the next step? So we would work one-to-one with those individuals. If they're ready to go away to a treatment program, we would certainly try to facilitate that. But we are advocating hard for more resources locally. And just that being said, there's a lot available locally, and this is our opportunity to integrate and make sure that that's the request of the ministry. Integrate and make sure that the left hand and the right hand are working together. And so that really is our next, and building on the partnerships already there. Hopefully that helps.
Could I speak to this as well, too?
Yeah,
please?
sure.
Okay, so we're very fortunate that we actually, as a community, might have the opportunity to bring a treatment center that is specifically for women with children under the age of 6. So there has been a core group, including Dr. Adam Newman, who I've been working on this project for about 12 years now, and it's looking good. Now, the reason that's so special in the sense is that we see that women that have a substance use disorder and have children are far less likely to present for many different reasons. A, CAS potentially getting involved, B, not having those family supports and being judged differently as a mother who is struggling and things like that. You even see it through needle distribution programs that people, women do not present nearly as often as men do for many different reasons. So that is huge. And we know that early on for children, that connection and those bonds and those experiences with their parents are more important. And substance use is a family disorder as well too, and it impacts the whole family dynamic. So really trying to take care of that family dynamic is super important. I would like to say that I think Carol's right about, like, I think we do have a lot of health services and really trying to nail down that defined pathway. But where our biggest struggle is the lack of housing, and that not being looked at like a health issue, and how that lack of housing is really impacting people's long-term care and bringing stabilization.
Thanks, Justine and Carol. So my second question is regarding the partnership with the police, but also with community. When we heard the term community used a lot, but I just want to delve into a little bit the neighboring community. And of course that you can have one person who, I had a conversation with a business owner in that area, and he made a few comments that it's actually been pretty good the last 18 months, but the last 2 months, something's been going on, and there've been a lot more kind of vandalism and robberies going on. And so that it might just be 1 or 2 individuals that are causing a problem, which is obviously that everybody else is thrown into the same bucket, right? So I just wonder, when things happen, could some partnership with the police, like some kind of rehabilitation programs, for people to learn from the consequences of their behaviors? I don't know, some creative kind of rehabilitation that in partnership with the police that could actually benefit the neighboring community as well.
I can start, and I know others on the call will contribute. And I know that even this week, I've had email updates about some really great reach out to neighbors in the community. And so I'll leave it for others to comment on that. I know that we were looking to get the community advisory up and running. And as Jill said earlier, have that opportunity for people to come together and look at differing needs, but how do we work together? And I thought I heard earlier something about mediation or mediated, because there are circumstances where that would be good. I think that would be part of our evolution, but maybe there's others on the call that could talk to that more than us. The one thing the ICH already is very strong on is this is a relationship model, and it's got to include all the people who share in those relationships. So we're certainly looking forward to continuing that work, and it's not always going to be easy. These are very complicated issues at times, but certainly being willing to hear and look for creative solutions. Thanks.
Thanks, Carol. Justine, feel free to jump in. Your hands up.
Yeah, I had an experience with a neighbor this week that like changed a lot of things for me. I felt like it was like a little bit like of a healing journey for both of us, and like really taking the opportunity to introduce her to her unhoused neighbors right now. And I think we're probably fearful in the past to do things like this. But in all reality, like people need to know who each other are so that they can respect the boundaries. And, you know, I've told people this for years. I've lived in this neighborhood. My car used to get broken into all the time. As soon as people realized it was me that lived there, it stopped. It stopped instantly, right? And this is what I'm trying to accomplish with the people that we serve and our neighbors as well too, is that if you want them to support you and back you up, you need to support them in the same way. And we just had a great experience with a neighbor this week. But I think to what happens with some of the increased crime and things like that is it's a lack of understanding in regards to the drug poisoning crisis and toxic cuts and fillers that are in the substances as well. So you'll see a lot with people that use benzodiazepines, or it's in their substance and they don't know they're using benzodiazepines. Is one of the increased behaviors with it is like people don't know what they're doing, and theft is actually a chronic thing. I used to have a client that would say to me, like, if you catch me in someone's bags after I use, that means there's benzodiazepines in it. And like she couldn't control some of the behaviors. And we see what long-term use of benzodiazepines does to the brain, and it changes the chemical makeup in your brain. So there's some behaviors that I think people actually don't even know that they're participating in sometimes. And I think there needs to be a little education surrounding that. But it would be nice to have some sort of program with police as to how we intervene as a community, as the hub. How do we hold people accountable too, like for certain behaviors, and how do we keep this neighborhood as safe as possible, so that everybody feels inclusive.
Great, thanks. So my final question is a lot shorter, and I just wanted to hear everyone's and Chief McNeely's thoughts too on decriminalizing drugs, like not legalizing it, but decriminalizing it, just like they did in Portugal, in treating it like a health crisis instead of a criminal issue.
I guess I can start a bit on that, just because you know, part of the drug strategy that I'm part of, and the Kingston Police are part of, and you know, I think in terms of myself, I've been, you know, vocal in our community with respect to decriminalization and being supportive of that, and all that goes along with that. But the real importance is really making sure that there are infrastructures in place to support all of that goes around, you know. And so I'm very grateful to hear and to learn more about all that's going on within the integrated care hub. I mean, we do our best to as I said, and as Clem said, to get our new recruits and to get everyone going through to have a good understanding of what's happening and all the good things that are happening in our community. So destigmatization, we're learning about trauma-informed care. So going off topic a little bit, but in terms of decriminalization, you know, making sure that, you know, if there are, you know, ways to, instead of laying charges for simple possession, that they can be passed on to programming that's there for them, that's in place, that can be obtained where they're at, meet them where they're at, kind of thing. And making sure that there's a whole holistic approach to this. And that means provincially that there's, you know, a drug strategy, and that there's a real focus on that, and funding to allow those kinds of things to happen, and to have that safe drug supply that's there. I mean, there's so many things, and transitional housing to, you know, permanent housing, and, you know, and I'm very much enlightened to hear some of the other programs that we're hearing about. You know, I mean, just recently the peer to community pilot project coming here to Kingston to bridge that gap, to keep people into transitional and permanent housing rather than going back into homelessness, and to see how that happens, a gap that's very much in our community. So, you know, when you talk about decriminalization, it's not just simple, it's complex. It takes many things to put together in place to get there. So it's not a short-term thing that's going to happen yesterday, but it's going to take a lot of laying the groundwork, putting the infrastructure in place, getting the stigma reduction there, getting the stars aligned, that we're all on the same page in this kind of thing, and focus provincially and nationally. You know, so proud to be part of the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. In terms of my side of the house, you know, we're certainly having some positive supports in that place, looking for a strategy so that there's good funding in place as well. So very, very proud to be part of our community and all the work that's being done with so many different partners that we're having here.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd love to say something about
Sure.
decriminalization. So from 2014 to 2019 in Canada, we charged 540,000 people with some sort of drug charge. 69% of them were for personal possession. And I think actually throughout the years, there's been an unrealistic expectation put on police. I feel like police have now become crisis workers, social workers, nurses, triage, all these types of things. And sometimes it is taken away from the focus of what they need to do. And they're just trying to navigate the system the same way social work would. What decriminalization will allow us to do, like Angie said, with the proper infrastructure in place and the proper education and campaigning and making sure everybody has a great understanding of what this will accomplish, because if we don't, we won't accomplish anything with it. But it would allow us to free up the resources with some of the struggles that we are having that are causing great turmoil in our community. So once this groundwork is established and we have the proper infrastructure in play, it'll save us a substantial amount of money through the criminalization, through corrections, through all these types of things, through our healthcare system. And then we can invest some of that money appropriately into the housing and supportive housing for people that use substances, preventative based stuff. But it has to be done the right way, because even if you decriminalize, you have to understand what the threshold is, or otherwise you're putting people in a position where they could be criminalized and it's actually harsher. And so community education is going to be key, but in the long run, it'll benefit us substantially and can help mitigate some of the serious struggles we have through housing and our healthcare system as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one question just
Please do,
in my
Jim.
mind. Yeah, I'd like to ask the board, as the Councillor Doty mentioned, that for a rehab center, what we need to do to establish a permanent basis, a rehab center, what as the city we can do, as the city government, or as a community, how we can support, or how we can people support to have a permanent rehab center beside the treatment, everything, for those who want to change their life and want to become, enjoy the normal life.
Anyone? Anyone
Well,
have all the answers?
Yeah, taking it to city council.
Yeah, probably
right?
Megan.
Yeah, Meg. So there's been we need to really advocate for residential treatment right now, because there's some strange things going on through residential treatment as well, through like the Ontario drug benefit and medications not being covered while people are in treatment is actually deterring some people now from going to treatment because they can't get their meds covered while they're in treatment. So we have kind of like taken some steps back in regards to residential treatment. And if you want to access an OHIP funded treatment center, you're looking at like a 6-month wait. And when you're in a drug poisoning crisis, people are dying before they're even able to get to treatment, right? So we need to advocate, especially provincially, we're struggling, to our leaders in our community to help us establish these supports for people, these necessary life-saving supports for people. So this is why we collect the data that we do in regards to referrals to residential treatments and things like that. But we just need to advocate fiercely as a community to our leaders about what we need and to the province about what we need.
Megan.
Oh, well, Carol, did you want to jump in first, Carol? Go ahead. You're on mute.
Thank you. No, just building on what Justine said, I think the other thing that we need to be relentless in demonstrating is that we have tapped out all the resources we have, that this net new investment is required, because the ministry really funds a number of programs, and we have to make sure that we've demonstrated that this is a gap. But Justine's absolutely right. Relentless advocacy, showing the numbers. Yeah, so I think that it is possible. I think that being able to demonstrate the need and the success that we're experiencing, and that we're a community of providers that can make things happen. All of those things work in our favor. The city of Kingston has really been a strong advocate, but it takes all levels of government working together to help support this. So there's a lot of work yet to do, but I really feel like we're on the right path. And again, data and consumer voices in that are really important. Thanks. Thanks, Megan.
And I just wanted to add too, so I know residential treatment is definitely an important resource and need in the community, but also not to undervalue community-based treatment. So things like rapid access addiction medicine that we have through Street Health Center. So Street Health Center is really unique in the sense that it is primary care integrated with addiction treatment. And to the ministry's credit, the Ministry of Health for years has now funded us for not only addiction treatment, but making sure we have rapid access, which means like same day, next day access. So an important piece of having that access is that if somebody does have a specific negative event, let's say as an overdose, so there's an opportunity there to engage them in treatment at that time, we make sure that that opportunity is available. So I know it's not the same as residential treatment, but having access to same day, next day addiction treatment in the community, I think is really important. And so we work really hard with the CTS and linking folks to Street Health Center. So we have our Street Health Center nurses are down at the CTS every day as well, connecting with folks. And so, primary care and the addiction treatment piece is available to them, and it's an important access point for sure. And then also too, not to diminish the significance of just having a consistent access to primary care. We know this population struggles with, the treatment that they get at more mainstream healthcare service organizations. And so Street Health, tailors service delivery to make sure that it is non-judgmental and, is their whole mandate is to serve people who are marginalized, who use substances, who are street involved. And so, yeah, even primary care is another important access point into addiction treatment is really important as well. And then the primary care piece and counseling through Street Health continue to support people in the community, even past residential treatment, and when they're back in the community. So I know it's not the solution for everything, but again, it's another piece of that puzzle along with residential treatment.
Very good. Okay, well, I want to thank Chief McNeely for putting this together. It's been very educational for myself, and it was very impressive to meet the people that are working with the Care Hub. You're all exceptional people, and I'm just really impressed for your knowledge and your devotion, and very good. Thank you very much. All right.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks,
Very
everyone.
cool. Thanks.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time, and we're going to continue now with the meeting. We'll say goodbye. Very good. And then so next will be if there's a disclosure of conflict of interest. No? Okay. May I have approval of the agenda? Christian, Jimmy, all in favor? Very good, thank you. Agenda is approved. Can I get adoption of the minutes from the meeting 2207 held on April 21st, 2022? Bridget, Jeff, all in favor? Very good. Next, we'll go on to communications. I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions with respect to the following communications received by the Ministry of the Attorney General, CAPG, Ontario Human Rights Commission, and the OAPSB. I actually do. I have a question. So, and this is for the board, but I just, maybe the chief can give a little insight on this. It's the right to disconnect policy. And it's not for, let's see here. The card applies to the Municipal Police Services Board with at least 25 employees who are not police officers, so being civilian members, police service, special constables, boards, support staff. So Chief, would you be able to just explain a little bit, because we're going to have to do a written policy for this.
Right.
So
Thank you. So just as a little bit of a background, on December the 2nd, Bill 27, the Working for Workers Act became law. Bill 27 amends the Employment Standards Act by including this right to disconnect legislation. And it's in an effort to protect workers' ability to balance personal obligations with work commitments, foster a culture of life-work balance, and to emphasize Ontario's commitment to supporting mental health. So employers who on January 1st of each year employ 25 or more employees must have a written policy. So for 2022, this policy must be in place by June the 2nd. So we have an exception for this year. This applies to civilian members of police services, like special constables, other civilian members, board support staff. And the definition of disconnecting from work means not engaging in work-related communications, including emails, telephone calls, video calls, or sending or reviewing of other messages, so that they are free from the performance of work. So employees must have the right to and should disconnect from outside of their normal working hours unless there's an agreement to do so, for example, if they're on call. It's a requirement to provide a copy of the written policy to each employee within 30 days of preparing the policy, or if an existing written policy is changed, that within 30 days of that change, that it's provided to the workers. And so currently our Human Resources Director, Sonia Verbeek, is well underway in preparing for this. So in our examples, it is just the civilian staff. It doesn't include police officers. And so an example of civilian staff that may potentially be on call might be, for example, our information technologies or IT staff. So there may be something, and we're working on that to see whether we're needing to have an on-call basis, but that would be something that you could still incorporate on call, but everybody else, you'd have that right to disconnect, and they don't need to respond until their next day of work. Of course, you can always connect under emergency services, but this is really what it's supporting. It's supporting the civilian, our civilian members.
okay, thank you for that. That makes sense. And then Sonia's going to take care of that. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, and we do have some examples too. Sonia's on the HR committee, and they're having samples from across Ontario as what we're sharing, and likewise with board policies. So there's sample board policies out there as well that could be assisted.
Very good, thank you. Bridget, did you have a question?
Your invitation for questions was for all of the communication from the Solicitor General, right? From the list?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I actually have a few, 3 questions and 1 comment. The first one was, are we planning on doing anything for the police week? Is there
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was introduced on Monday. We put out the initial announcement with respect to that it's Police Week and the themes. So we're looking at celebrating Police Week in the media through social media posts. We're highlighting the patrol division. We're looking at the core and the traffic unit, highlighting the ERU and the canine unit, and as well as the CID and IDENT, and then having a final closing on Saturday in terms of the highlights. So you'll see some reports in traditional media, social media, and so forth.
Excellent, great, thanks. And I just wonder if you could go over quickly about the school bus, the lighting requirements, so that people could hear about that. I think it's important. And also just quickly go over the continued mask and face covering policy. Yeah.
I can certainly jump on those for you. In relation to the school buses, essentially what they're doing is mandating that it's going to be an 8-light system on buses now. So the fronts will have 2 yellow, 2 red, the backs will have 2 yellow, 2 red. So buses that were, a lot of the buses generated before a certain date only had red lights. So now they're going to have both flashing amber and flashing red. And you'll see a lot of buses now also have the flashing beacon on the top as well. So that's not part of this legislation. This legislation merely outlines all buses that are manufactured now are required to have the 8 lights, 4 amber, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, 4 red, 2 at the front, 2 at the back. So that's that. And as far as the masking, what they're just outlining is that obviously masking is continuing until June 11th in certain areas, mainly high-risk areas, long-term retirement homes, shelters, hospitals, things like that. They outline a number of areas where you're still required to wear a mask. Public transit, for example, if you see the Kingston buses now, they'll say masking still required until June 11th. And of course, in that legislation, they're also advising that could change, but right now, June 11th being the date where they're going to remove that requirement for these high-risk areas. However, that'll all be dependent on how the next several weeks go, and they can make changes before they get there.
Great. Yeah, it's good to remember all of that. So, and then my last thing was just a comment, Jerry. Glad that you're sticking around for another 6 months.
Yeah, so they had asked me if I'd stick around, and I am loving what we do. And so I had said I'd stick around for another 3-year term. But they sent that letter in saying 6 months. And I guess that's just standard in an election year. They don't tell you that you're safe. So I hope I get to stick around. There's lots of work left to do. And but my intent is not to go anywhere. So
Thanks, Jerry.
Congratulations for 6 months at least.
all right, good. Thank you very
Back
much.
to you again. Yeah.
Thanks.
I have a question also, Mr. Chair, if you may allow. The memorandum number 15 for the Public Safety Division Anti-Racism Director is now accepting application to support those anti-hate security measure for faith-based and cultural organization. Are we thinking to apply for that for the Kingston?
So that grant in particular is only for nonprofit organizations, so that we as the police, we're not able to apply. There's money available for groups in our community, should they be interested, from $5,000 up to $10,000. But it's pretty specific that it only is going to cover security for particular premises or training to assist in, assist them in any anti-hate type of behaviors that may happen.
Okay.
So, but it's for the nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
I can say that we
possible?
sent that out to our community
Yeah.
partners. So we sent that out through CORE so that they could share that as well, just to add.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to ask, if we can share this information through the court to all the culture and religious based organizations, so they're aware of it and they can apply for it. So thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Anyone else? Okay. So we'll go on to delegations, which is none. Reports, we have none. Making a motion. It's requested that the Kingston Police Service Board endorse the transfer payment agreement for funding under the Provincial Priorities Funding Stream of 23-2024-25 Community Safety and Policing Grant with the Solicitor General relating to the funding stream focus on provincial priorities, Project Beacon. I need a first and seconder on that. Jeff, Jimmy, very good. All in favor? Thank you very much. And then I will ask if there's any new business. No. In that case, I would ask, before I say move into in-camera, Lori, are we good? Yes, okay. So then I would ask that we move into move in camera. The firster and a seconder. Very good. Bridget, Jeff, all in favor? Awesome. And let's say, coming to break. Okay,
Sounds
very
good.
good. Thank you.
Thanks. See you then.
Bye.
Coming back in 5 minutes or directly?
They didn't say, Jimmy. I'd say 5 minutes.
Okay. I'm gonna leave the meeting.